Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to night 7 of the Toronto International Film Festival. We're halfway there. My name is Jake Howell, and I'm one of the Festival Programming Associates here at TIFF, and it is my pleasure to welcome you all to the international premiere of LYREBIRD, directed by Dan Friedkin. To begin, we would like to acknowledge that the screening is taking place on the treaty territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation and the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee, Anishinaabe, and the Huron-Wendat. We are grateful for the opportunity to work in this community. Just a quick reminder that this film is eligible for the Grolsch People's Choice Award. To participate, simply go online to tiff.net/vote and cast your ballot there. Finally, the festival would like to thank 30 West for providing us with this film. Now, without any further ado, would you please help me welcome to the stage the director of LYREBIRD, Mr. Dan Friedkin.
Thank you. I appreciate it. So I'll keep my remarks very brief. I know everyone's been watching a lot of films, but I just want to express my appreciation to all of you for being here, for making the time. TIFF is known for having the most wonderful audiences and people watching these films in the world at any festival. And so I'm deeply appreciative of this opportunity to present our film and really thankful of the time that you guys are spending to see it. I want to thank Cameron Bailey for inviting this film. Our lives certainly changed when we heard that this film was invited to TIFF. It's a wonderful opportunity not only for the film, but for me personally. And everything's been a little bit surreal since I got that news. But enjoy the film. Thank you all. Thanks for being here. And we look forward to speaking with you afterward at a Q&A that we're excited to do. So thank you. Thanks very much. Thank you very much for that. I appreciate it. Thank you.
First of all, I want to congratulate the both of you on the successful sale of this film to Sony Pictures Classics.
Thank you. We're
just announced today, actually.
We're very proud of that and just honored to be working with such a great group of people and to partner with them on this film, but thank you.
Absolutely. Would love to get into how the both of you started chatting about this project.
Yeah, so I'll start, but this project, the genesis of this was about 7 years ago. I was talking to a friend and he mentioned this. I've always had a love for this period and not just this historical period in terms of World War II and the trauma of World War II, but how societies come out of that and how they develop and how they generate hope to be able to heal from that process. So I've always kind of been intrigued with that. And then when I heard that this Han van Meegeren story was kind of placed in that time frame of kind of post-war recovery Holland, I took great interest in it and loved the story. And it hadn't been told on this scale anyway. So we started developing the script, and that was about, as I said, 7 years ago. And then Claes, I became really familiar with Claes because we were involved with a film called The Square, which we've all, I'm sure, heard of or seen. And a film that I loved, and I loved his performance in that, and we got to know each other, and I thought he'd be perfect for this role.
And Dan approached me for it, and I never knew this story. And I think it's incredible because it's like such an insane story. And I read the script, and I was like, "What the fuck is going on here? It's so crazy." And I really just loved the story right away. But then I also thought that this character was really interesting because he's come out of the war and he's really damaged in a way, and he's sort of trying to find his way back on his feet. Like, you know, putting the bad guys over here and the good guys over here, and he's making everything sort of black and white, and I could sort of very much relate to that sort of thing. When I get really fucked up, I try to do that. I put the bad guys over here and the good guys over there. No, there was something that I really connected with there, and I thought this story was really, really cool, and I that was sort of my key to sort of unlocking the character or something, just sort of try and find my way through it like that, yeah, and that sort of became the starting point of it. And then we did a lot of work, you and me and Guy, on the script and working with the script and trying really to get our heads around it. So it's been such a pleasure, really.
Dan, I'm actually grateful you brought up The Square because, Claes, obviously you play a curator in that film, and then, in fact, if anyone here has seen the Burnt Orange Heresy, which is playing at TIFF this year, you're playing a critic.
I only work in art films.
That's all he does.
Don't
now.
ever approach me about anything else.
Could you talk a little bit about what the art world, what you find so compelling about the art world?
Yes, but I have to say it is purely coincidental, and I would never take on a part because of the job that the guy has. It's not really about that. So it is about what's going on with this,
Right.
with the guy, guy. I mainly play guys. So it's not really about being set in the art world. It's more that all these characters, like that they sort of have. It's a different angle and a different take on the art world, but it's more sort of that they are all really, really interesting characters. But it is slightly weird that I have stumbled into all these art films. I promise I won't do any more.
Speaking of the art, I feel like in addition to the costume and set design, which are both extremely well done, the production design, Dan, I would love if you could talk a little bit about the challenges of bringing these very real props that you are working with here.
Yeah, I mean, the first thing I started with the look that I sort of wanted for the film, and I wanted it to be a very kind of a European-feeling film, quite contained, although at times it grew out of that sort of organically, but European framing and kind of classic framing and shots, wide shots, stay on wides, not push into mids and close-ups too soon. And fortunately, we had great guys and women acting in this film who were able to kind of let us stay with that. So that worked out really well. But I wanted it to have kind of an emulsion film quality to it always. You know, that's something I really love, is that feel and that texture. So we used digital cameras, but we used cameras that provided us with that feel. And then from that, we had Arthur Max, who's done some great films over the year, who I got to know through a film that our production company and our producer Bradley Thomas and I worked with Ridley Scott on that film. And I got to know Arthur Max on that. Arthur did Gladiator and several other Ridley Scott movies and some others. So he was terrific, and we had kind of a common vision of how we saw things when we worked on that other film. And I remembered when we were trying to hire our keys for this film, that Arthur and I had kind of a similar vision for that sort of thing. We talked a lot about European style and so forth, so we were lucky and able to get him. And it was important to me also to shoot in situ and to not build sets and create an environment that felt forced a little bit. So I hope that we capture that, a feeling that you're really in the environment and in that moment.
And I feel like this film, I mean, you're making a fake real fake. Do you know what I mean? What are some of the challenges of bringing in fake Vermeers for stand-ins?
Get to that, and you mentioned fake, real fake. I mean, and that is one of the issues, one of the kind of key themes I think of this film, and we talked about a lot and developed, is that, you know, who's to say, where do we draw the line on what is a fake? You know, everything's informed. Everything comes from a collective view and vision of other experiences and other things that we've been exposed to. So we wanted to play with that in the film, this notion of where is that line? Where does something become a fake and when is it not a fake? And we all recognize, I think, that those lines are pretty blurry. But in this case, you know, but to get to the specific question, we hired an artist who does a lot of films, and he was incredible as an artist, and he was able to do these very quickly, in some cases on set, you know, and just start painting and do amazing things when we needed changes in the paintings and things like that. So we just had a really good team working on that, and we recreated these paintings. We probably created, for this film, in excess of 40, 50 paintings, yeah.
I don't want to hog these gentlemen, so if you do have a question, please raise your hand, and I will try my very best to repeat it. I see one right over here.
I knew nothing about the story. It was fabulous.
Thank you.
Historical fiction, loved it. My question has to do, it's based on what he did. Was that book that was found at the end literal, or did you fashion that? Was he ever discovered as
Yes. So it's a fair question. I had the opportunity to meet some of his family members on set, And I mean, they came and visited us and just found us, which was great. And they weren't entirely sure whether he was actually fully collaborative or whether he was with the Nazi regime or whether he was doing it to, in fact, get through the war. But that book does exist still. The very book exists. These were obviously, we didn't burn the real one. But the book does exist. A little bit of a twist is we actually burned the book because we felt that that served our story and what we were trying to do, both visually and in terms of creating kind of a character arc for Claes and the realization he comes to and how he ultimately realizes that his peace comes from within and not from external things and external things that he can kind of make tidy and solve.
And we also moved the discovery of the book slightly because actually in the real story, the pillar character defends Han knowing about the book.
Yeah.
But for dramatic purposes, which is legal in this business, we moved it so that that discovery came a little later. But the book exists, and yeah, there was absolutely a grey area there. That, nobody actually really,
Right.
even his own family that came out to set, they were not actually really sure where his sympathies were. So.
And yeah, thank you. So that was a bit selfish, I guess, on our part. It was visually selfish. I mean, we wanted to, of course, Nazis were certainly great burners of knowledge in books and literary material, so we wanted to sort of turn that around at the end and actually burn the book.
Yeah, over here.
Was your decision always to make the film in English, or were there any parts that you kind of thought that maybe in Dutch or completely Dutch?
Was the film always intended to be in English?
It was. Claes's Dutch is really not very good. No, but it was always meant to be English. It's a very good question, and it was a tough decision. Certainly would have been difficult for me to direct in Dutch. But yeah, I mean, it was just sort of base it in English and create a European film, and we settled on that kind of constant as opposed to trying to pull people in and out of an already fairly dense film in terms of material and dialogue, and then to try to weave in more subtitles in different languages. We thought that would be a little bit complex.
Yeah, over here.
Hi.
Hey.
Thank you. What a riveting film, and it snuck up on me subtly in this cool adventure, yeah. But this is the third film I've seen during the festival that centers around World War II history, and I think we're all fascinated by it. But what I like what you did with this is, and again, you snuck up on us, you developed such colors and character development with different people. Suddenly, evil wasn't just owned by the Germans. It was everyone who took part in it. And your character kind of became more empathetic and understanding. People just became less black and white throughout. And I love that. Was that your intention? from
That's
the
interesting.
beginning?
That's really, really cool. Yes,
Yeah.
that was so the intention. Absolutely. That was very deliberate. No, but the thing about it is that, this guy's journey is sort of like, really being on this crusade of sort of saying, this is the black and this is the white, and I need to understand. In order to get back on my feet, I need to put the blacks here and the whites there. And what he is about, his journey is about sort of understanding that that's actually not really an option. You need to come to terms with that there are probably a lot more greys than the black and whites. But it's really interesting what you say, because it sort of shifts all the time. Who's actually the baddie? I don't actually think we thought about it that's really cool. I love it. That's something extra, Dan.
I agree.
It's a selling point.
I think we eventually.
Oh, we have sold it.
I think we eventually got there, but it took her 2 hours. It took us a year and a half.
That's so cool. Yeah,
And it
that's
wasn't
great,
quite that. Yeah,
No, but it's
developed,
it's
but that is
actually.
good, yeah.
I haven't thought about it like that, but it's really clever. It's actually quite cool.
One of the things to that point that we talked about a lot is, what you just illuminated is this notion that things are, life is, as we all know, it's shades of gray more than sort of black and white, and his character ultimately comes to that realization. He's then able to, because he recognizes the shades of gray, he's able to do something very important. He's able to forgive himself and others, and recognize that his internal peace is what creates his happiness, not something from in the exterior world that he can't fully control. So it's largely a film, I think, about forgiveness, at least for me, and that is the shades of gray. Once you realize that there are different ways of doing things, and people deal with the trauma of war in very different ways, and his character ultimately realizes that, and he's able to sort of do what you ultimately do in the film.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We have time for 2 more questions, and we'll go over there. What's the significance of the title?
So, yeah.
You do it.
So, a lyrebird is an Australian bird that does not generate its own unique sound or call, but mimics the sounds of other birds and other animals and other things. And
It's actually, if this bird has just once heard the voice or the call of another bird, it can emulate it.
yeah,
Yeah.
right. That's right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Thank you. Yeah, right here.
How did you recreate some of these old time things like the burned out or the bombed out Rotterdam or the crossing the bridges in old
Questions about the set design.
Set design, yeah. I mean, as I said before, we were really lucky to have great production people, particularly led the individual I met, Arthur Max, who led a great team. And then we have other people who were able to shut streets down in Amsterdam for a period of time. We were talking about that today.
Yeah.
And yeah, what was your experience? I mean, it created that environment.
Well, that just, I mean, I actually thought, once again, when I saw it driving through all yeah. I still don't know actually how, so you'll tell me at later, I suppose. But no, I mean, the luxury of, blocking half of Amsterdam and taking all the new cars and all the new stuff out and putting all the old stuff in and getting in your 1945 sort of uniform and just walking around there. That's just, I can totally recommend that to everybody. It's really, really a luxury. I mean, no, it's incredible. I mean, Amsterdam obviously has this very, very old feel to it, and when you just do a little bit of it, but it's really special. Yeah, it's like, being allowed to walk inside a museum alone at night or something. It was so cool. Thank you for that.
No, thank you. That's great. Please.
I'm just curious about the relationship between your character and your wife's character. Is that based on truth, what happened to their marriage, and was she meant to be non-Jewish and you were Jewish so she could pass without being...
I'm actually not entirely sure about that. We have not, I think in that,
The question is about the relationship between Claes's character and his wife.
if she was a Jew or not. I'm not actually sure exactly what that... In the script, it's been like this, and I think for dramatic purposes, this works really well, but I'm not actually... I owe you an answer on that. I'm not sure.
Yeah, and I just... there isn't a lot that's known about the Joseph Pillar character. That's not right. That relates to this film, but there's a fair amount known about him. He was truly in the underground, and he was actually quite heroic, and he would take each evening, sort of during the war, he would move Jews out of the underground to the safety of Belgium and other borders. And so he was actually a really heroic character. But there isn't much known about these other dynamics, and so obviously in script we serve the story with some things that are developed.
Well, I think he absolutely thinks that, I mean, she did her thing and he did his thing, and her thing meant that she did stuff that he did absolutely not agree with. But he was, obviously, at that point, I don't think you have a choice. You do what you have to do to survive, and what she did sort of helped the resistance. But obviously, he had a problem with it after the war. And I think in terms of what we're talking about here, that whole thing of him coming to terms with the Greys and just sort of forgiving her, forgiving himself, forgiving the whole thing. I mean, how the fuck can you actually argue with something like war? And I can't really say, because I've never lived in, where I'm from, we've never been at war while I've been alive. But I suppose it will fuck you. Totally. So that was sort of the assumption here, that it sort of messes with you in a way that you can't actually, you can't really comprehend it in a way. Yeah, that was what we sort of tried to establish. Yeah.
Beautiful ending. I think I speak for Saul. Was that not just like a perfect movie?
Yeah, that's not.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
I think that's a very good way to end it. Ladies and gentlemen, please give it up for Dan Friedkin, Claes Bang,
Thank you all
and
very much.
LYREBIRD.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thanks, buddy. Appreciate it very much.